Morning, everybody. It's good to see you. Can we thank Joe and the band for leading us today? Thank you. All right. It's good to see you all. You all are here. Some of our friends in this room are starting college this week. All right. That's a big deal. Um, Sending our love, praying for you. Glad we're not where you are, but also happy for you. All right. We did our time. All right. And I'm just grateful. What a great way to start like a new year. It feels like a new year. People are back in school. We've been in this conversation called the energetic exchange, fierce prioritization of your well-being. Part of the series was birthed out of just a simple question that I started asking some of you all. It's the Sunday morning classic question. How are you? And you all, instead of going, good, see you next Sunday, you're like, I'm not well. All right. To which I'm like, oh, tell me more. All right. And turns out the reason you're not well is because you're an American. And I don't know if you know this. I don't know how many of you travel abroad, but I can just tell you, my friends that live in other places this week, we hear from all kinds of different people. I have a friend in Switzerland reach out that listens every week. Yeah, the whole world's like, hey, what's going on over there? Like you need to know the world's like, are you guys okay? Like, do we need to come help you all? Like, what's happening? To which my response is, yes, we do need your help. All right. For many of us, you just being honest, you're like, what's wrong? You're like, I'm tired. I'm tired. And you don't have to have any excuse or reason to be tired. You're a human being. You live here in 2025. You're exhausted. You've used words like I'm depleted. I'm fatigued. I'm stressed, overwhelmed, drained, depleted, and burnout. And so we thought it'd be good to step into this conversation to talk about maybe why we're tired, maybe why we're exhausted. And so what I want to do today and then next Sunday, it's a teaching series together because I want to look at like this passage in the scripture that I won't be able to get to all today. So we'll start it today and then we'll jump into it next week. But I want to talk about a particular prophet in the Old Testament who experienced burnout, all right? Experienced fatigue. And I want to look at maybe what we can kind of pull some ideas, some truths from his experience to say, what would it look like for us to mimic the healthy responses he had? So if you're tired, you're exhausted, you feel like on the edge of burnout, the one thing we've already said is don't keep going. That's the worst thing you can do. Don't keep going. Now, culture will tell you to just push through, pull up the boots, keep going. No, don't keep going. Actually, we need you to stop. But we don't need you to stop just to stop. We need you to stop, and we need you to listen. Listen to that fatigue. Listen to the burnout. Listen, here's the other word, to your life. Listen to your life. Because that fatigue is a language of the soul. That exhaustion is the way your body speaks to you. And we have to, as a culture, learn to listen, not just to our thoughts, not just to our minds, but listen to our bodies and say, what could this fatigue be telling us? Now, that said, I want to look at this prophet in the Old Testament. It's in the book of 1 Kings, chapter 19. And I want to read a little bit of the setup of his story and then how he experiences his burnout. And then next week, we'll get into a little more of how he questions and listens to his own life. Now, that said, let's jump into this. This is 1 Kings chapter 19. I'll pick up in verse 1. Now, you need to know in the scholarship world, this is a story about Elijah. And I'm just curious, how many of you in here, you're familiar with Elijah? How many of you have heard this prophet before? All right. Wonderful. You've probably heard of like the guy behind him, Elisha. Elijah, in the scholarship world is like a legend. All right. In the Hebrew world, he is a legend. All right. But you also need to know that most scholarship says the stories around Elijah are considered folklore. Okay. These are legendary stories that the Israelites gave us in hopes to encourage the modern day prophets at the time in which this was written. And one of those was Elijah. And if you've never read any stories about Elijah, man, you'll know it's folklore when you start reading it because, good Lord, what a wild, wild story around Elijah. And then, of course, he doesn't die in the end. He just flies off on what they call a chariot of fire. All right. So people that read the Bible in a literal way, give me that picture. All right. It's like Aladdin. You know what I'm talking about? It's like Elijah's like, I'm out of here. I'm jumping on the chariot of fire and I'm gone. All right. No, these Israelites know what they're doing. These are epic stories. I would say it like this. We say it all the time around here, but it's a reminder for us. Marcus Borg said it best about the Bible. The Bible is true. I'm not here to debate that. I'm telling you, the Bible is true. And this is what Marcus Borg said. I love this. He said, the Bible is true, and some of it actually happened. Now, that said, I'm not interested. And did it happen? Did it not happen? Irrelevant. What I'm interested in is, what could this story mean? And then what could it mean for us? What did it mean for them? What could it mean for us? So let's pick up. This is 1 Kings chapter 19. Ahab, most of you know who Ahab is. If you don't, Ahab was the king of the northern kingdom of Israel at the time of this writing, okay? Ahab told Jezebel. Now, Jezebel, you've probably heard that phrase before, okay? Jezebel was the wife of King Ahab, okay? Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, so may the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life like the life of one of them by this time tomorrow. Pause, for those of you that aren't catching up to the scene yet. Elijah has killed some prophets of a false god. This has upset King Ahab and his wife Jezebel. So Jezebel sends a messenger to Elijah and says, what you did to those prophets, we're about to do to you. All right? So this is it's like a love story. Okay, here we go. Verse 3. Then he was afraid. He got up and fled for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah. He left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat under a solitary broom tree. He asked that he might die. It is enough. Can we just pause there? Because the first time I read this, I was like, God, whoever wrote this, man. Now, I know they didn't write it in English, okay, but the New Revised Standard Version Updated Edition wrote it in English. And whatever translation they decided to give, I just love it. A group of people are sitting around and they're all making calls on what these words mean. But my favorite is that somebody at that table was like, look, I think the best one-for-one, because there's not a one-for-one translation on any of these words. They're like, I think the closest we can get to what's happening here is, it is enough. And I don't know, maybe whoever these translators were, like, maybe they were feeling what I'm kind of feeling, because that really speaks to me. Like, have you ever just gotten up in the morning and you just kind of look at God and you just kind of, like, you don't, sometimes it's, but you want to shake your fist at the heavens and be like, God, I've had enough. I have had enough. Anybody in the room had enough in here? I've had enough. I've had enough of the news. I've had enough of existence. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, I'm literally at a place now going, I'm 44 years old. I think I've seen what I need to see. I'm good. I'm good. There are days I love it, but there are days where I'm like, I've had enough. I've had enough. I have had enough of this administration. I've seen enough. I had a whole full term. Now I've got 6 months into this term. I'm good. You can go on now. I've had enough. You know what I mean? Like, I have had enough. I love this line. Now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my ancestors. Then he lay down under the broom tree and he fell asleep. God, I relate to this. Suddenly an angel touched him and said to him, get up and eat. He looked. Well, look at this. And there at his head was a cake baked on hot stones in a jar of water. Now, I like cake and water. That's great. I prefer fries and beer, but cake and water will work. He ate and drank And he laid down again. God, this is basic stuff here. Some of you are exhausted. Can we just start here? Have a meal. Go to bed. Oh, we're about to get there. Hang on, okay? Then the angel of the Lord came to him a second time, touched him, and said, get up and eat, or the journey will be too much for you. He got up and he ate and drank. Then he went, this is an interesting phrase, in the strength of that particular food, 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the Mount of God. When he arrived at that place, he came to a cave, and he spent the night there. Then the word of the Lord came to him, saying, what are you doing here, Elijah? What are you doing here? Okay. Now, we got a few minutes. I want to get at a little bit of the backstory of what's going on here. Then I want to talk about politics for just a minute. Specifically, when you talk about Gavin Newsom and when you talk about Trump and what's happening, it's really, really interesting to me. So I want to talk about both those. And I love that I'm in a space, a church, where we're allowed to talk about these things. So I want to talk about that. And then when we shift out of that, I'm going to give you what the heart of the message is, which is very basic today. Now, next week will be, hopefully next week will be like, well, I hadn't thought about that. This week is about as elementary as it gets, but it's so elementary, I'm still convinced most of us, like we've forgotten this truth. It's like a truth that we've forgotten. Okay, all that said, let's give a little backstory here. Elijah has called out King Ahab and his wife Jezebel for, here it is, idolatry and oppressing other people. Okay? Elijah is in the work of resistance. He is a prophet. Part of what he does in the narrative is he calls out injustice when he sees this. Okay? Now, what Elijah has done is he's found King Ahab, who's over the northern kingdom of Israel, and he has recognized, oh, there is unjust treatment happening here, and you are also encouraging God's people, the Israelites, to worship a Canaanite god and Yahweh. And Elijah says that's a problem. It's a problem because it's called idolatry, and you cannot serve two masters. So Elijah goes back, and it's as if he's pointing towards the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Now remember, that's like a marriage covenant of some sorts. The divine is just saying you can't have other lovers. You can't. It is either the way of Yahweh or it is the way of another god, but you cannot hold hands with both, and here's why, because they run opposite of each other. That's why. So there's no way you can be like, okay, I'm going to be a Christian and I'm going to be a nationalist. Do you understand what I'm saying? Those two cannot hold hands together. So when I hear people talk about, oh, Christian nationalist, I'm like, oh, here's the thing. You can claim it all day long, but you need to know those two paths do not run parallel with each other. And so it creates a real situation because you have to kind of start making decisions. So am I a nationalist or am I a Christian? And this is where we are in America right now, by the way. I mean, the invitation's on the table. We get to decide as individuals which path we're going to go down. And this is what a work of Elijah is. This is what he does. He's calling out these leaders and he's just saying, hey, that's idolatry. And they will use words like this: turn, repent, get back on the track. What was happening is Elijah or King Ahab and Jezebel were persuading the Israelites to worship a particular Canaanite god. Now, you've probably heard this Canaanite god called Baal. Have you heard that phrase before? B-A-A-L. Now, scholarship, did I tell y'all I have an MDiv from Emory? Okay. It's been a while. I bring it up now because school loans are just kicking in. Thank you, this administration, okay? Now, that said, When I went to Emory, they corrected me real fast. They're like, it's not Bell, it's Ball, okay? To which I was like, I beg to differ because my Southern Baptist told me it was Bell, all right? They're like, doesn't matter. Here's what I'm saying. Call the God whatever you want to call the God, all right? For all intents and purposes today, I'm going to say Ball, only because there might be a couple of Emory professors looking, and I still admire and want their approval, okay? So when you hear Ball, that's Bell, you get the point, all right? Now, Baal or Bel was a Canaanite god who was believed to control rain, storms, and agricultural fertility. Okay? So, you have to ask the question, why would the king of Israel, after God has set them free through Egypt, all the way through the Red Sea, all the way through the wilderness, now in the, quote, promised land, why would you have gone through all of that and then now shift and turn and begin to give your allegiance to a Canaanite god that is the storm and fertility god? Great question. Part of the reason is because they needed their agriculture to flourish. And it appeared that Yahweh wasn't coming through with that. They needed rain for their crops. They needed sunshine for their crops. They needed a harvest. Or you could word it like this: they needed prosperity. And what the Canaanite God offered from the Canaanite prophets, or the prophets of Baal, was, if you'll just tip your hat and you give a little bit of allegiance to the Canaanite God Baal, then he will make sure you flourish. He will make sure you have prosperity. There is only one God that can control what happens in Canaan, and it's the Canaanite God. So it's a real easy pitch. It would be like King Ahab and Jezebel, who bought into it, would say something like this: hey, I need you to acknowledge, thank, and get on board with Baal, because Baal is here to make Israel great again, right? This is the idea. It's prosperity. It's, if you get on this track, things will go the way you want it to go. So you can see an easy slip in the Israelites going, yeah, and honestly, what's it going to hurt? It doesn't hurt anything. And clearly, Yahweh isn't really making it rain around here. You know what I'm talking about? So we need food. We need food. We need existence. We need healthcare. We need all. So okay, great. So they get on board, and Elijah comes around. And he's like, "Oh no, we've got a problem here. We've got a problem." And Elijah decides to start by calling out King Ahab and Jezebel and their idolatry, but then he moves to the mouthpieces of Baal. So he moves to the, quote, disciples or prophets of this Canaanite god. And you probably know this story before, but a chapter flip behind 1 Kings 18, Elijah gathers on a mountain with 450 representatives of the Canaanite god Baal. So get the image, right? Elijah's on a mountaintop by himself. I think he had like an assistant or something is what the text says. It wasn't assistant, wasn't the actual Hebrew word, but you know what I mean. And then there's 450 representatives. You ever felt like you're outnumbered? I've been a pastor in the heart of the Bible Belt for 10 years. I helped start this church 20 years ago. I've been here for 22 years. I need to tell you this. Being a quote, unquote, progressive pastor in the heart of the Bible Belt, there have been days where it felt like it was 1 in 450. And I have felt like, oh my God, I might be wrong in all of this because I think I'm the only person who sees the world this way. And there were days where I actually was convinced I might be the only person who sees the world this way, because this church at one point was 1,200, then it got down to 12. And when I came up to speak one Sunday and there were 12 out there, I thought, wow, we are the only ones who see the world this way. Yeah. Elijah's up on the mountain, they're 450, but then it's like a showdown, right? So Elijah does this whole showdown. It's fantastic. And he says, okay, here's the thing. If Baal and your God is a God with all the power and can do whatever it is you claim this God can do, then I want you to get a bull, set it up as a sacrifice to your God, and then I want you to call out to Baal, and I want you to ask Baal to bring down fire on the sacrifice. Now, pause here, because some of you are familiar with this story, and you're like, yeah, why fire? Remember, Baal is the Canaanite god of the storm. So when he says fire, he could very well be talking about lightning here, right? So he's like, I'm going to set up a bull, a sacrifice, which is very common. I know it's archaic to us, but it was common in that day. And then here's what's going to happen. CNN, Fox, ABC, NBC, they're all going to set up shop. We're going to do this live. It's going to be like what would you call it? Like a public debate. And all the cameras are going, and clearly somebody, is like writing this, and they're like, oh yeah, this is a great story. And Elijah's like, okay, the bull's here. Now, call out to because you keep saying that God will provide. You keep saying inflation's down. You don't take it personally. I'm trying to bring it into our world, okay? You keep saying we're flourishing, but I've been to Publix. Do you understand what I'm saying? I was there last night, and I'm hearing one thing, but my bank account's feeling another. So in my world, I see that, we call that a lie. Do you understand? That's a lie, right? Okay? So Elijah's like had enough, and he's like, fine, if you want to do this, let's do this. Let's just make a scene of it. Let's do it. And he says, if you think your God can provide, then provide away. Cry out to your God. See if he comes to your aid. I just want to throw this out here for everyone who's gotten in bed and you've left your relationship with Jesus to compromise your integrity, to get in bed with someone who has zero integrity. I want you to know something. When you cry out for his help, he will not be there for you. And I also want you to know this, for every grandmother who has left their grandkids behind, I mean this with all compassion. I hope the decision was worth it, because Trump will not be at your funeral. Because I think, and the reason I say that so harsh is because somehow we've fallen into this malaise, because we bought into these ideas that, oh, these people really care about us. And we're sacrificing not bulls, we're sacrificing families at the altar of a Republican Party. And we can flip it. Republicans love to deflect. So yeah, just deflect, flip it the other way. Yes. If anyone's sacrificing any flesh and blood on an altar for the sake of some particular political ideology, I just want you to know, before you make that decision, understand the cost of it. And Elijah's like, see if he comes through. And so he stands there. And I want to read to you how it went, because when I read it, I was like, oh man, Elijah and I might be cousins, all right? The text says their God was silent, which, by the way, this is a direct attack on Baal's power, because Baal is the one, he's going to provide for the crops. So he could easily shoot down lightning. He's the storm god. So he easily shoot down lightning and burn up the bull, right? And that would have been the end. I'd been like, fair enough. He came through. He must be real. But here's what the text says. This is 1 Kings 18:28. This one won't be on the screen, so don't worry. 18:28 says this. At noon, I don't know why that's in there, but I'm sure it matters. At noon, listen to this. Elijah mocked them, saying, cry aloud. Okay, cameras are going, and Elijah's sitting over there going, keep crying. Call out to your God. Now, I know some of you are like, yeah, we shouldn't be mocking, right? Yeah, just hang with me, okay? This is folklore, all right? And then I love this, Elijah. Surely he is a God. Maybe he's meditating. This is 1 Kings 18:28. Maybe he's meditating, because nothing's happening. So you can imagine everybody's like waiting, and 450 prophets are like, Bell, shoot down your lightning and burn this up. And Elijah's like, oh, he's just in meditation. Just keep crying out. And then I love this. Maybe he's wandered away. Maybe he's on a journey. He keeps going. He doesn't. I'm like, bro, you can back off now. Maybe he fell asleep. Maybe you should wake him up. This is 1 Kings 18:28. Now I want to pause here for a minute. Now, you know this is really hard. Part of my job as a theologian is to take these ancient texts and understand the historical context and the world in which they're written, and somehow try to make some sense and relevance of the world in which we're at today. And these are dangerous. Every time I step up here, these are dangerous things that I'm doing here, because you have to be careful, because what I wanted to be true about me is I was true in some ways to the text as I understood it, and so I want to be careful making parallels. Now, all that said, it's really interesting that you have Elijah in some ways mocking or mimicking what he's seeing from these prophets of Baal. Now, this week I saw what you saw. For those of you that are unfamiliar, the governor of California, his name's Gavin Newsom. His team did something this week. I think it even started the week before, and it has moved beyond fascination for me. It's actually kind of blown my mind a little bit. All right. And for those of you that are unfamiliar, here's what Gavin Newsom's team did. They decided to put out a list of tweets, but they decided to mimic their social media post the same way that Trump writes his post. Okay. So if you're not familiar, they've been pushing out ideas like whatever he writes just like Trump writes his social media posts. He puts it all in caps. You know what I'm talking about? And when you read this Newsom post, all you can hear is the president's voice, because he writes it the very same way. And then at the end, he's writing all of it. So he'll say something like, the best governor in the world, Gavin Newsom. You're talking about like he's just the greatest of the greatest of the greatest. It's going to be a bad day for old Donnie boy. We call him Don the lie. You know what I'm talking about? Like, and so it's almost like an SNL skit, and I'm reading this. I'm hysterically laughing, going, "Oh, Newsom, come on!" And I know it's not. Gavin doesn't have that in him. No offense to anyone who likes him, but he doesn't have that in him. But he has enough wherewithal to hire a team of millennials that somehow know how to do that. And what really cracks me up is I know there's some 22-year-old in the office, and Gavin's basically like, "Dude, just handle the social media presence." He's like, "I got it," right? So you know this is how it works, right? It has to be how it works. So Trump's up late at night like, I can't stand it. And what he doesn't know is there's like a 21-year-old going, oh my God, I have access to the governor of California's social media posts. Oh, this is about to get good, right? And he is just burning a hole in the soul of this president, right? And then he'll sign off his things going, thank you for your attention to this matter, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. Now, you would call that satire, okay? It's like South Park, SNL, it's satire. I also want you to know it is far more than satire. And the reason these things are important, and I'm doing work on this, we'll probably get to it next year, but it turned out to be larger than I thought, but I'll give you a little sneak on it. When you live on an authoritarian empire, underneath a dictator or an authoritarian, satire, what the prophets called symbolic action, or what we might say creative resistance, is a necessity. It's actually how the thing's going to be flipped, okay? So anytime I see these things happening, I don't look at it and be like, oh, that's funny. I look at it going, that's it. And that's it. And watch the creatives rise to the surface. This is why, by the way, all throughout history, the emperors who they despised the most were the artists. It was the songs the artists were singing. It was the small little exposure that the artists were giving. This is why I've got my eyes up right now. I don't even know if you know this. There are so many young musicians rising to the surface right now, writing songs about them leaving Christianity, writing songs about how they're walking away from the church, writing songs about this administration and what's happening. It's almost the whole the emperor has no clothes moment with all of these artists. And I'm getting introduced to more and more going, oh my God, watch it rise. Watch this happen. Okay? Now, that said, there's something really profound about what this team did with Trump's social media post. And here it is. And I don't want to try to make this larger than what it is, but it just struck me because I thought, God, this is profound. So just on a basic level, here's what they're doing. They're mirroring Trump's actions. Okay? And by doing so, now I should pause here. They're mirroring his actions as long as his actions aren't harming people. Okay? So Paul's pretty clear about that. All right? We do not fight evil with evil. Okay? Because that's only going to lead to more evil and destruction. But where the genius creative resistance comes in is when you say, yeah, this isn't harming, so I can take this spot and I want to mirror it. I want to reflect it back to the people. Now, here's why it's so profound to me. They're mirroring Trump's actions, and by doing so, they're exposing, there it is, apocalyptic, they're exposing the absurdity and insanity for what it actually is. And here's why it's so profound. MAGA can't see it when Trump does it. But this week, Gavin did it, and they saw it. Now, that's basic confirmation bias. You know that, right? We can't see it within our own people that we admire. But when it got on someone they were told in the cult to hate, then all of a sudden they're like, that ain't right. Yes. Yes, it's not right. You're right. And I mean this. That's all we've been saying the whole time. It's not right. And I open the invitation to say, please come join us. For all of you that need to walk away from the idolatry of MAGA, you're welcome here. Come, join us. That's what we've been saying. But what's happening is something so profound. All of a sudden, many are seeing it for what it actually is. They couldn't see it in Trump, but they can see it, and not just see it, but experience it in Gavin. And their judgment is now outside of the malaise and haze of the Trump cult. Now, I don't know if a 22-year-old was like sitting in the office of Gavin thinking that. I'm fairly certain he's probably like, oh, let's just make him mad. But it was far more profound than I think people realize. Now, I want to go a step further with this, okay? It was so profound. There was an anchor on Fox News who said by the way, I should tell you this, I don't endorse candidates here, okay? Because part of what we do here is we get into the politics, so we are political. There's no such way to be non-political. Everything you do either confirms or denies the status quo. You know that, right? So there's no such thing as being non-political. What we are pretty aggressively nonpartisan, and what I mean by that is we do our very best. I do not endorse candidates here, okay? And part of the reason is because I'm committed to the way of Jesus, and that is where my allegiance is, and that's what we try to we try to follow that path here at VO. And here's the thing. That said, I don't want neither the right nor the left to co-opt the way of love and the message of Jesus. That said, though, there are seasons and times when authoritarians rise up, things happen, and all of a sudden you start to see things, you're like, okay, great. What we will do is give our energy like the prophets and call out the injustice and speak up for the marginalized, the oppressed, and the alone. And I would like to go a step further and say this, because I know most of you are probably Democrats and they're great. That's how you subscribe. It's not your identity, which is what I love about this place. Most of you in here would be like, I'd flip in a heartbeat if that was closer to the way of Jesus. Do you know what I'm talking about? And that's what I love. So I'm going to say this. I will also call out the injustice, and I will also call out those who are marginalized and pushed to the edges on the left as well. Okay? And we're good with that, right? Whether you are or not, I just want you to know that that's the game plan here, okay? And I'm going to tell you why, because it comes back to what's happening right here, okay? And this is critical for us. Fox News came out, one of the anchors on Fox News, looked at Gavin Newsom's tweets and said, that's childish. I am going, it is childish. Yes, it is. Thank you. Okay. Gets even better. I heard one Christian say, oh, look at the Dems. Now they're all about Gavin Newsom, and he has, quote, no integrity, unquote. You're right. Now, here's what's even more amazing. They asked Gavin Newsom about it in one of the press conferences. Maybe you've seen this flying around. They're like, Gavin, what's the deal with these tweets? To which, if you go back and watch the video, it's kind of funny because there's a moment where he's like, I like to read into things. I like to think he looked at like his assistant and be like, somebody's tweeting? I don't think he knew. Honestly, I'm like, I don't even know if he knew, but he's kind of like, somebody tweeting on my behalf. And he steps up and he says something really profound. I love this. He steps up and he says, if you've got issues with what I'm putting out, then you should have issues with what he's putting out. You see how that works? It's the mirror. If you have a problem with Gavin's integrity and you don't have a problem with Trunk's integrity, we have problems. If you have a problem with how childish that looks, but you don't have a problem with how childish this looks, we've got problems. You have fallen into a deep spiral of confirmation bias, where you cannot see outside of your own echo chamber. And that is a problem for all of us. And that's why it's important to keep pulling back the layers and doing our own inner soul work, people. So here's maybe what this reveals. What this reveals is something profound. If Trump tweets it, it gets praised. If Gavin tweets it, it's called immature. What is this exposing? Tribalism. Tribalism. And you can take it a step further. The Republicans have done something detrimental in trying to rig the election. And what I mean by that is they have decided to try to redistrict the state of Texas. You've heard about this, right? Now, you would only do that midway through a decade if you have a sneaking suspicion that you might not win. Okay? And you're trying to rig and set up stuff. Now, here's what happened this week, okay? And you have some fantastic humans in Texas working hard for that, okay? But then you had Gavin come out and he said something really profound going, you do that. Now follow me. He's no longer mimicking the tweets. He goes a step further and says, we will redistrict California. So he's now mimicking the actions. Now here's what's profound. Out of the words of commentators on Fox, that's not right. Here's the exposure, and this is why I'm saying I don't know what's going to happen, but it's profound, because I'm going, oh, so it's okay if it's him, but it's not right if it's him. And even if we don't do anything with that, can we just acknowledge that? Because if you're in a place where you cannot even acknowledge that, now Christians in the Christian world we call that hypocrisy. Psychologists may call it a double standard. But even if it's just that, if we could just get to the simple acknowledgement that that's what we're actually doing, that might be a giant leap in consciousness for us as a nation. Now, what that could be saying is it could be the exposing of tribalism. And what maybe we're really doing is this. We're recognizing that many in MAGA that wouldn't confess this, many Christians that I know, in my own family, that I love, that wouldn't confess it or say it this way. But you cannot heal what you do not acknowledge. And it's time we start acknowledging some of these ideas. And here it is. Could it be, just go with me, could it be that you have wrapped your entire identity up in your political ideology? And because of that, you cannot in your mind break from any political ideology that you have co-signed with, even though you know internally it isn't right. But to do so would begin a crumble at the very foundation level, and you're terrified to even entertain the idea, because it might mean you need to do some deconstruction. But if we admit one part we might have missed, then all of a sudden we're scared because that might mean we missed another part. And it takes a lot of death ego to admit that you're wrong. Sign me up. Being right is a hell of a drug. I love it. I love it. I mean, sometimes Katie and I get in the house and we'll start going at it. And when I win, oh my God. Now, I want you to know something. I never ultimately win. Do you know, when I say win, like in the moment I walk away, you're like, yeah, got you now. But then that night I'm like, hey, babe. And she's like, other room, babe. Trump, Gavin. All right, anyways. Okay. Now, could it be that we start to realize Here's the realization. Here's the thing. That maybe because we've wrapped so much of our identity in our political ideology, that maybe in an act of protection, given the benefit of the doubt, in an act of protection, because I want to just pause here. This isn't true about all of them, but I know my family members who've chosen to go the MAGA path. I know them. And I want to say this. First of all, there's some deep, deep unconscious white supremacy happening. And brothers, sisters, pray for us as we go into family reunions. Because when I tell you they don't have a clue and see it, they do not see it. And that's terrifying. But I also am aware that at one time I didn't see it. So I use spiral dynamics. I try to go slow with the growth. You know what I'm talking about? It's just little conversations here and there, dropping some seeds. Yeah, okay. But I want you to know this. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. And I want to say this. A part of it is they're so terrified to have to come to a realization that maybe they missed it somewhere. And so much of that was webbed into the theology I was handed, because I was handed a theology that you know, that you know, that you know, that you know, and you never question and you never doubt. And this is why every time I run into a Christian MAGA person, they always look at me and they go, do you know for a fact you're going to heaven when you die? And I always look at them and going, of course not. And you don't either. Oh, I bet you I do. Oh, congratulations. Then you don't need faith. You know what faith is? It's trust. I only trust because I'm not certain. If I was 100% certain, I wouldn't have to trust. The opposite of faith, and the church theologian said this, and I don't know which one said it, but he was amazing, whoever it was, or she, I don't know. Church theologian said this, the opposite of faith is not doubt. The opposite of faith is certainty. Okay? And so I just want to say, I get it. We're dealing with people, I need you to know this, family and friends that have stood on the rock of certainty their entire lives. And to tell them that maybe they're standing on the wrong rock is not just an easy, just vote different. Friends, that's an entire reconstruction of their lives. And that doesn't happen in a tweet. That's hard work that you and I are walking out of this room and rubbing shoulders and sweating and bleeding and getting into it to try to help move the consciousness a step forward in Mableton. In your family. Yeah. And that work is exhausting, isn't it? Isn't it? God. I mean, all I wanted to do was go and just sit by the pool at the family gathering, and turns out it's not just a pool at the family gathering. You're knee deep into theology and politics, and it's a lot. But may I offer this idea? Maybe we come to the realization that the reason it's wrong for Gavin and it's not wrong for Trump is because our identities have gotten so caught up in our political ideologies. And we may not say this, but here's what's actually happening. You have become more loyal to your party than the truth. You have become more loyal to your team than the truth. You have become more loyal to Trump than the truth. You have become more loyal to your political ideology than integrity. And you have become more loyal to the nation of America than the kingdom of God if you are a follower of Jesus. And this is why the prophets call it idolatry. Because what's happened is many people confused God with their nation, faith with their politics, opinions with the absolute truth, the kingdom of heaven with earthly power, and those aren't the same. You cannot serve both of these gods. And Elijah says, it's not going to work. And their God is silent. So what does Elijah do? He mocks him a little bit. He double tweets. And then he comes by the mountain. And I'm not kidding, y'all. You can read this. It's a great story. It's like a good bedtime story for your kids. Just when they get to the part where they kill all the prophets, don't read that to them, okay? But Elijah says, all right, I'm going to call on my God now. We still watching? They're like, yeah, we're watching. I'm going to call on Yahweh. But before I do that, so help me God, he pours water all over the bull. Because, well, you know, water and fire, that's how you put out fire. So Elijah's like, well, let's just make it even harder. Just pour water on it. And then he calls out to God, and sure Sure enough, the fire comes down. Now, all of that said, he defeats the prophets of Baal. He goes on the run into the wilderness and he hides from Jezebel. I want to close with this. All of that was just in chapter 18. Then you move to the chapter that we just read, chapter 19. And what you find is Elijah comes down from that monumental moment. And he moves into the wilderness, sits under a tree, and he begs to die. Elijah is disappointed, he's depleted, he's burned out, and he's depressed. Isn't that interesting? Because he just had one of the most remarkable, monumental moments in the biblical narrative, and like the next day, he's just depressed. And what you see is that Elijah is between two mountains here. Mount Carmel, where the showdown happened, and Mount Horeb, where he's trying to get to, where he can get some rest. His body can't go on. I believe these two mountains speak about the dissonance of this particular individual from his public life to his private life. Mount Carmel is a public, national, spectacular showdown where he defeats the prophets of Baal. Mount Sinai or Horeb is the holy mountain where he is seeking refuge, rest, and guidance. It's like a dissonance between the public life and the private life. The public life is national victory, success, power, courageous, confident, and winning. The private life is depression. I feel lost. I'm afraid. I'm confused. I'm tired. I'm burned out. I want to die. And I want to say to all of us in the good work of justice, be careful what you post. Nothing will exhaust you more than living a different life in public than in private. And what happens? The angel of the Lord comes to him a second time, touches him, and says, get up, eat, or the journey will be too much for you. I want to end this right here, okay? And this is as elementary as it gets. So you knew we were heading here, and then we're done, and we're all going to eat and sleep. So this will be the first time we all can faithfully say we're going to apply the sermon today, okay? The divine begins with the basics. Isn't this interesting? He did not come to Elijah and be like, let's talk about the depths of your soul. Now, we're going to get there next week. We're going to talk about the depths of our souls. We're going to get there next week. He didn't start there. Here's where he started. Have you hydrated, Elijah? That's it. This is the Bible. Have you hydrated? I love this. When's the last good night of sleep you've had? Tell me about your eating habits. This is in the Bible. It's not worded like, you get the point, right? Here's the point. While we seek some grand spiritual theophany, the divine simply begins with the basic physical reality of fuel. Elijah hasn't been taking care of himself at the most basic level. And what the writer says, without saying it, is listen to your life. Listen to your body. If you have cravings, go further with the cravings. Find out why they're there. Do they harm? Do they not harm? Why are they there? If you have fatigue, why is it there? If you are thirsting, why is it there? Frederick Buechner said it like this: one of the blunders religious people are particularly fond of making is the attempt to be more spiritual than God. Because we come and we're like, tell us the deep, intricate recesses of our soul and why we're fatigued. Okay, you probably need to get a good night's sleep. You probably need to start drinking a little more water. You probably need to just check the intake for a minute. Honestly, now I'm talking to me. How much Chick-fil-A are you going to eat in a week, Cody? And then you roll out on the golf course like, I just don't have an energy to finish 18. Well, yeah. How many spicy fried chicken sandwiches are you going to put in your body and then be like, God, I don't know why I'm tired? You understand this, right? I mean, some of us are like, I don't know why I'm so exhausted. How long did you doom scroll last night? And then you're like, I'm fatigued. What else would you be? Let's just start basic. But we're going to get to the deep spiritual part because some of you are like, I don't like this part. Get to the deep spiritual part. We're going to get there. But right now, just basic. Just basic. Audit your intake. Audit what you give your energies to. That's all I'm asking, and we got it. Now, let me just close here with this quote from Frederick Buechner as well, okay? We went a little long today, but the Gavin thing was crazy. All right, so here we go. Frederick Buechner said this. I think this will be on the screen, maybe. I think we got it. It says, if I were called upon to state in a few words the essence of everything I was trying to say, both as a novelist and as a preacher, it would be something like this. God, I love this. Listen to your life. See it for the fathomless mystery that it is. In the boredom and pain of it, no less than in the excitement and gladness. Touch, taste, smell your way to the holy and hidden heart of it. Because in the last analysis, all moments are key moments, and life itself is grace.